Welcome to Wisdom for the Present, where we take ancient truth and bring it into clear, modern understanding. This episode uses AI-generated narration based on human-researched and written material.
Picture this. You are standing on a golden chariot, right, drawn by these massive white horses, and the air all around you is just completely thick with the dust of thousands of soldiers and animals.
Yeah, just absolute chaos.
Exactly. And suddenly this auditory storm erupts. Conch shells are blaring with a sound the text actually describes as a lion's roar.
Oh, wow, a lion's roar. That paints a picture.
Right. And drums, cymbals, gongs, they all crash together in what the source calls a loosened tempest. But here's the kicker. Across the battlefield, waiting for the signal to strike, the people trying to kill you are your own grandfathers, your childhood teachers, your cousins, your uncles.
Yeah, and that is exactly the terrifying precipice where our deep dive begins today. We are exploring the first 3 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita, and our mission here is to act as your guides, to extract the practical wisdom, the moral insight, and the real-life application embedded in this profound ancient text.
Yes, and we are not starting in some quiet room with a philosopher stroking their chin.
Right, definitely not.
We are starting right on the sacred plain of Kurukshetra, mere moments before a cataclysmic family civil war is about to break open. The text just hits us with this overwhelming sensory experience before a single philosophical point is even made.
It really does. Like the blind king Dhritarashtra asks his visionary narrator Samjaya to describe the battlefield, and we just get this chaotic buildup of sound, right?
Yeah, and the cascading effect of that sound serves a very specific narrative purpose. The aged king's side blows a conch to wake the blood, which triggers this massive violent clamor meant to strike terror.
Which is just a crazy psychological tactic when you think about it.
Completely. And the opposing side, the Pandavas, they answer right back. We see Krishna, described as the heavenly charioteer, and the warrior Arjuna. They blow their own massive battle shells.
Right. The text gets really specific here, doesn't it?
It does. Krishna blows a conch carved from a giant's bone, and Arjuna blows Indra's loud gift. And the clangor literally quakes the earth and thunders the heavens.
I mean, that isn't just atmospheric noise, It is the sound of absolute inevitability. The war is instant to break. Weapons are unsheathed. This is the ultimate point of no return.
Exactly. Which makes the very next action so incredibly jarring.
Yeah, Arjuna, whose chariot features this massive ensign badge of Hanuman the monkey flapping in the wind, he tells his charioteer Krishna to drive the car into the open ground directly between the two armies.
Right into the middle of it all.
Right. He says he wants to see more closely those who will fight, those he must slay today. He essentially demands to look his collateral damage right in the eye.
And when he looks, he doesn't see a faceless enemy horde. He sees his humanity reflected back at him in the most intimate way possible.
Yeah, that hits hard.
It really does.
Yeah.
Krishna parks the chariot right in front of the opposing leaders, Bhishma and Drona, and tells Arjuna to look at his kindred.
And Arjuna looks at both sides, and he just registers all these faces, right?
Yeah.
Grandsires, sires, uncles, brothers, sons, cousins, nephews, fathers-in-law.
The very people who taught him how to hold a bow are the ones standing across from him, ready to die. And in that moment of recognition, this legendary warrior drops his weapons and completely refuses to fight.
And that right there is the crisis of action, duty, and identity that anchors this entire text. Arjuna experiences a severe, full-body breakdown. We are looking at the paralysis of the present.
Yeah, the text describes acute physical symptoms here. His limbs fail, his tongue dries in his mouth, a shudder thrills his body, his hair actually bristles.
He says the life within him seems to swim and faint. He sinks into his chariot seat, sick at heart, and just lets his bow slip from his hand.
To really understand the weight of that, we have to look at the biology of what is happening, right? This isn't just a mere intellectual hesitation.
No, not at all.
This is a severe physiological trauma response. The sudden, terrifying realization of the consequences of his actions triggers this massive adrenaline dump that his body just cannot process.
Resulting in a systemic shutdown.
Exactly.
And we can translate that directly into modern terms, even if the stakes look different on the surface. What Arjuna is experiencing is acute analysis paralysis, scaling all the way up to a full-blown panic attack.
Oh, for sure.
It is the moment when the abstraction of a goal suddenly becomes a tangible, terrifying reality. Like, think about it for a second. You strive for a promotion for years, right? And suddenly you are sitting in the executive chair, realizing that the restructuring plan you just approved will eliminate the jobs of people you have known for a decade.
That is a great analogy.
Or you decide to end a long-term relationship, and suddenly you are looking the person in the eye, watching their heart break in real time. The reality of the collateral damage hits you with a physical force.
And Arjuna is looking at the ultimate collateral damage. His moral argument against fighting is incredibly compelling to us.
It really is.
He tells Krishna that he foresees nothing but woe and wail. He completely rejects the idea of triumph, domination, and wealth if it must be bought with the blood of his family.
Right. But his argument goes deeper than just immediate grief, doesn't it?
It does. He presents a really complex, systemic argument about societal collapse. He argues that killing his family, even for the, quote, rule of all three worlds, will destroy what he calls sweet, continuous household piety.
Yeah, he is projecting the long-term systemic consequences of this violence. He worries about the breakdown of the family structure itself, arguing that by overthrowing these houses, impiety will enter the home.
Exactly. He warns that women will grow unwomaned, leading to mad passions and a mingling of castes, which he believes will send the entire lineage on a hellward road.
He even brings in the spiritual mechanics of his culture, noting that the souls of honored ancestors will fall from their place of peace, bereft of the necessary funeral cakes and death water.
Right, because the rituals will stop.
Exactly. So for Arjuna, facing his family weaponless and baring his breast to their spears is a morally superior choice to answering blow with blow.
And that brings us to a really significant friction point for modern readers. When we hear Arjuna's tear-dimmed, despondent plea, our modern instinct is to side with him completely.
Oh, absolutely. 100%.
We view his reasoning as logical, empathetic, and morally sound. He's choosing peace over power. He is prioritizing human life over political ambition.
Right, because in our contemporary ethical framework, empathy is usually the ultimate trump card in any moral dilemma. If an action causes immense suffering, the immediate imperative is to just stop the action.
But the text is about to push back on that modern instinct in a massive, deeply uncomfortable way. Krishna does not validate Arjuna's empathy.
No, he doesn't comfort him at all.
Not even a little. Here's where it gets really interesting. He delivers this radical, paradigm-shifting philosophical rebuke. He asks Arjuna where this inglorious trouble comes from, calling it shameful to the brave and barring the path of virtue.
I mean, he literally calls Arjuna's compassion a coward fit and commands him to wake up, be himself, and arise as the scourge of his foes.
That harshness is entirely intentional. Arjuna is lost in pity, distracted by doubts, and begging for counsel, explicitly stating he will not fight. Krishna begins his instruction by introducing the core teachings of Sankhya philosophy.
And he starts with a staggering claim, right?
Yes. He says, "Thou grievest where no grief should be. Thou speakest words lacking wisdom. For the wise in heart mourn not for those that live, nor those that die."
Man, that is an incredibly tough pill for a modern audience to swallow. Do not mourn for the living and do not mourn for the dead.
Right. It sounds so cold to us.
It really does. But the text justifies this by introducing the concept of the indestructible life, the eternal self. Krishna states that neither he nor Arjuna nor anyone on that battlefield ever was not, nor ever will not be. All that lives, lives always.
To understand the mechanics of this, we need to look at how Sankhya philosophy views existence. Sankhya is fundamentally dualistic. It separates the universe into two distinct categories. First, there's Purusha, which is pure, unchanging consciousness or spirit.
Okay, the spirit.
Right. And second, there's Prakriti, which is all matter, energy, and the physical mind.
Basically everything tangible and mutable.
Exactly. Krishna is explaining that the true self, the Purusha, is entirely distinct from the physical body it currently inhabits. Just as a human frame passes through infancy, youth, and old age, the spirit passes through various life abodes.
The text actually states that end and beginning are dreams. The spirit is birthless, deathless, and changeless.
Yes. And there is a famous metaphor used in the source here to illustrate this separation.
Right, the robes metaphor. Krishna says, "As when one layeth his worn-out robes away, and taking new ones saith, These will I wear today. So putteth by the Spirit lightly its garb of flesh, and passeth to inherit a residence afresh."
It's beautiful, isn't it? The body is just clothing for the soul. The underlying logic is that you don't weep when you take off an old coat.
But the invulnerability of this true self is absolute in this framework. Krishna emphasizes that weapons cannot reach the life, flame cannot burn it, waters cannot overwhelm it, and dry winds cannot parch it.
It is invisible and encompassed by word and thought. Therefore, Krishna argues, How can Arjuna grieve when he knows the man newly dead is, like the man newly born, still living?
The end of birth is death, and the end of death is birth. It is an ordained mechanical cycle.
Right.
Okay, but let's pause on that claim for a second and offer some serious pushback, because if we look at this through a modern ethical lens, it sounds highly problematic.
It really does.
If the soul cannot be killed, if bodies are literally just clothes we change out of, isn't Krishna just giving Arjuna a massive, convenient philosophical excuse to commit mass slaughter without any guilt?
That is the big question.
Right. We are looking at the ultimate clash between deontology, which is duty-based morality, and utilitarianism, which judges morality by the outcome. Arjuna is arguing like a utilitarian. He's saying the outcome of this battle is mass death and suffering, therefore the battle is wrong.
Exactly.
But Krishna is arguing from a rigid, duty-based framework, and he is layering it with this metaphysical claim that essentially nullifies the weight of physical death. So how do we reconcile this dangerous-sounding logic today without viewing it as a blank check for violence?
That is the essential challenge of interpreting this text, and it requires a high degree of discernment. We have to carefully untangle the enduring, universal wisdom from the literal socio-political context of ancient India.
Which is so important when reading ancient texts.
Absolutely. In the literal narrative, Krishna is speaking to Arjuna, who is a Kshatriya, a member of the warrior caste. In the Vedic social structure, the universe is maintained by everyone performing their specific caste duty, their dharma.
Right.
For a Kshatriya, maintaining cosmic and social order through lawful war is the highest imperative. Krishna explicitly tells him that shrinking from this duty brings infamy, which is worse than death for a noble, and that a lawful war is an unsought gateway unto heaven.
Okay, so yes, in the ancient context, Krishna is telling a warrior to do his violent job to maintain the social order.
Yes.
So for a listener today, we obviously cannot apply that literal instruction. We cannot use this philosophy to excuse a lack of empathy for physical suffering or to justify causing harm under the guise that, well, the soul is eternal anyway. We have to dig past the ancient caste mechanics to find the psychological truth.
And the psychological truth, the enduring wisdom here, lies in the distinction Krishna makes between essence and accident.
Right, the core versus the temporary.
Exactly. He is challenging Arjuna, and by extension us, to separate our eternal, unshakable core from the fleeting, temporary roles we play in this physical world. The physical world, the realm of Prakriti, brings heat and cold, sorrows and joys. It is entirely mutable.
It's always changing.
Right. Krishna tells Arjuna to bear with it as the wise bear it, because the soul that takes sorrow and joy indifferently with a strong and constant calm lives in the life undying.
We suffer so immensely in our modern lives because we fuse our identity entirely with our garb of flesh. And I don't just mean our physical bodies, you know?
No, it's everything external.
Exactly. We identify completely with our job titles, our bank accounts, our social standing, our reputations. We mistake the temporary roles we play for our actual essence. And because all of those external things are fragile and mutable, I mean, they can be fired, bankrupted, canceled, or aged. We live in a perpetual state of terror and grief.
We mourn the loss of a career as if we have literally died.
We confuse the clothing with the person wearing it.
Yes, that's it exactly. The profound shift Krishna is offering is the realization that you are the indestructible life within. The circumstances you face, the economic downturns, the interpersonal conflicts, the physical illnesses, they are just changing weather.
Wow, just changing weather.
Right. When you truly internalize that your core essence cannot be diminished or destroyed by any external event, you unlock an incredible, unshakable calm. You gain the ability to act decisively in a chaotic world without being psychologically destroyed by it.
So let's bring this to the listener right now. Think about your own day-to-day. Think about a crisis or a deep anxiety you are wrestling with right now. Take a moment to critically examine that fear.
It's a great exercise.
How much of your panic is attached to your garb of flesh, your ego, your title, the way others perceive you? Yeah. What would happen to the physical tension in your body if you could mentally step back and realize that your true self cannot actually be harmed by the situation?
It changes everything. Facing a modern battlefield is entirely different when you operate from a foundation of invulnerability.
It really is.
But, that realization of the eternal self is the crucial foundation. But it creates an immediate practical problem.
Right, the implementation problem.
Exactly. Once you accept that the physical world is fleeting and your essence is eternal, how are you supposed to actually live in the world?
Because you can't just float away.
Right. Krishna transitions from the metaphysical claims of Sankhya to the practical mechanics of Yog. He offers a specific method for action designed to burst what he calls the karma band, the bondage of wrought deeds.
To understand karma band, we have to look at how ancient Indian philosophy viewed action. It wasn't just a metaphor. Deeds were thought to generate a literal, unseen, energetic residue.
Yes, a real karmic weight.
Every action you took, especially those driven by desire, created a karmic tie that bound your soul more tightly to the physical cycle of rebirth and suffering. Action itself was viewed as a trap.
Which is why Krishna's solution is arguably one of the most transformative and counterintuitive insights in the entire text. He doesn't say stop acting. He says, let right deeds be thy motive, not the fruit which comes from them.
Not the fruit.
Right. He introduces the concept of total detachment from the outcome. He warns Arjuna against being a seeker of heaven, criticizing those who perform various rites and extol the letter of their scriptures merely to promise themselves profit and power in new births. He calls this a sad righteousness which calculates.
A sad righteousness which calculates. That phrase perfectly diagnoses our 21st century reality. We operate in a deeply transactional culture.
Deeply transactional.
Every action is measured by its return on investment. I mean, we work the 60-hour week specifically to secure the promotion. We adopt a specific diet to achieve a specific look in the mirror. We curate our thoughts and post them online specifically to harvest likes, validation, and followers.
The action is entirely subjugated to the outcome.
Exactly. And the psychological danger of that transactional living is severe.
Krishna argues that people who desire wealth and power the most have the least fixity of soul. When you tie your self-worth and your peace of mind to the fruit of your action, you're handing the remote control of your emotions over to external forces you cannot control.
Right, because you don't control if the boss gives you the promotion. You don't control if the algorithm favors your post.
Exactly.
It makes me think of an artist who genuinely loves to paint. Like, the act of putting brush to canvas brings them immense flow and joy. But the moment they decide to commercialize their art, the dynamic shifts.
Changes everything.
Right. They start obsessively checking their sales metrics or their social media comments to see if a piece went viral. Suddenly, they can no longer enjoy the act of painting itself. The fruit has entirely poisoned the action. Their joy is held hostage by the audience's reaction.
Yeah, as a perfect example, Krishna's instruction to the artist would be, paint the picture because painting is your right deed. Execute the action with supreme excellence, and then mentally abandon the painting.
Just drop it.
Let the world do what it will with it.
Yeah.
He tells Arjuna to find full reward of doing right in right. True piety is equability remaining steady in good or evil, in profit or ruin, in victory or defeat. You must do the work, but you must completely relinquish your claim to the results of the work.
And this philosophy isn't isolated to this one text either. If we look at broader human wisdom traditions, we see echoes of this everywhere.
Oh, absolutely.
It is the core of Stoicism, which teaches the dichotomy of control. Focus absolute energy on your own choices and actions, and practice total acceptance of whatever outcome fate delivers.
Yes.
We see it in modern mindfulness practices, too, that emphasize being fully present in the execution of a task rather than projecting anxiety into the future result. True freedom is not engineering the world to give you what you want. True freedom is mastering your own internal state so that external validation becomes irrelevant.
The text puts it starkly here. The right act is less, far less, than the right thinking mind. The physical execution of the duty isn't enough if your internal state is frantic with anxiety about the outcome.
Right, if you're sweating the results, you're not detached.
Exactly. True devotion requires perfect meditation, stepping away from the tangled oracles that ignorantly guide us toward seeking gain.
So when Arjuna asks Krishna how to identify a person who has achieved this steadfast, heart-like, how they sit, how they move, how they speak, Krishna replies that this person finds full comfort in their own soul. They are not dejected in sorrows, nor overjoyed in joys. They dwell outside the stress of passion, fear, and anger.
That's the ideal state.
So listener, pick just one task on your agenda today. It could be drafting a difficult email, cooking a meal for your family, or just helping a colleague solve a problem. Approach that task as a practice in detachment.
Just for one task.
Yeah. Consciously throw away any desire for a thank you, for recognition, or even for the task to go perfectly. Execute the action to the absolute best of your ability, and the moment it is done, crop it. Notice the incredible lightness that comes when the burden of the fruit is removed from the work.
That lightness is the goal.
Yeah.
But, Krishna's demand for total detachment creates a massive paradox. And as we move into the concepts covered in Chapter 3, Arjuna spots the flaw in the logic immediately.
He's paying attention.
He is. He listens to this praise, the calm, detached mind, and he gets confused. He says to Krishna, "If meditation be a nobler thing than action, dost thou impel me to this dreadful fight? Now am I by thy doubtful speech disturbed?"
It is the ultimate logical question, isn't it? If the goal is a perfectly calm mind, completely untouched by the world, and if action constantly risks tying us back to the desire for fruits, why engage with the world at all?
Why do anything?
Right. Why doesn't Arjuna just drop his bow, walk off the battlefield, find a quiet cave in the Himalayas, and meditate for the rest of his life? Why do the laundry? Why go to work? Why participate in this messy, complicated, violent reality?
Well, Krishna's answer is a definitive rejection of escapism. He states, "No man shall escape from act by shunning action. Nay, and none shall come by mere renouncements unto perfectness."
You can't just hide.
Exactly. He explains the inescapable mechanics of existence. You cannot exist without acting. Your breathing, your heartbeat, the metabolic processes of your cells, these are all actions dictated by the law of your nature. To pretend you can cease action is a complete delusion.
And there is a brilliant line where the text notes, "Forethought is act in fancy." I love that. If you sit in a cave forcibly suppressing your physical limbs, but your mind is still churning, dwelling on earthly things and desires, you are not enlightened.
No, you're playing the inept and guilty hypocrite.
Yeah.
True renunciation happens in the mind, not in the physical withdrawal from society.
Right.
Furthermore, Krishna explains that action is woven into the very physics of the cosmos through the cycle of yajna, or sacrifice.
Oh, this is a fascinating concept.
It is. To understand this, we have to look at the Vedic worldview. The ancients didn't view rituals and actions as mere symbolic gestures. They viewed them as literal mechanisms that kept the universe running.
Like gears in a machine.
Yes. Krishna describes a cycle initiated by the Creator. He says, work brings sacrifice, sacrifice pleases the gods who bring rain, rain brings food, and food sustains the living. It's a deeply interconnected ecosystem of mutual obligation.
And the implication of that is just massive. Krishna says that he who eats the world's food without doing his part, rendering no gift of toil, is quite simply a thief.
A thief.
He says, he that abstains to help the rolling wheels of this great world, glutting his idle sense, lives a lost life, shameful and vain. You cannot simply consume the benefits of civilization. I mean, the infrastructure, the agriculture, the safety, and refuse to contribute your own action to the rolling wheels. You are required to put your shoulder to the wheel.
And Krishna uses himself as the ultimate proof of this concept. This is a profound model for leadership, actually. He tells Arjuna to look at him. As the divine, he is not bound to any toil in the three worlds. He has no heights left to scale, no gifts remaining to gain. He requires absolutely zero fruit.
Nothing.
Yet he acts. He is physically there, driving the chariot on a dusty battlefield. Why?
Right. Why bother?
Because, as he explains, if I acted not earnest and watchful, those that look to me for guidance, sinking back to sloth again because I slumbered, would decline from good. And I should break earth's order and commit her offspring unto ruin.
Wow. That completely reframes why we work, doesn't it? We don't just act to secure our own outcomes. We act because others are watching. We act because the structures we uphold are bearing the weight of other people's lives.
It's about responsibility to the whole.
Exactly. Think about a veteran community leader or a master teacher. They might have reached a point where they don't need another accolade or a higher salary. They are completely content, but they continue to show up and they continue to strive for excellence because if they checked out, the students and the community members who rely on their standard would decline.
If the leaders slumber, the order breaks.
Right.
The text draws a sharp contrast between the enlightened and the untaught here. The untaught toil fiercely because they are wedded to their senses and desperate for the rewards. The enlightened person should also toil just as fiercely but completely freed from sense attachment, acting solely to bring the world deliverance and its bliss. You work to uphold the world.
And part of upholding a world is understanding your specific place in it. This brings us to a crucial point about dharma, or duty. Krishna makes a very pointed, almost harsh statement here.
Very pointed.
He says, finally, this is better, that one do his own task as he may, even though he fail, then take tasks not his own, though they seem good. To die performing duty is no ill, but who seeks other roads shall wander still.
This is a profound diagnostic tool for modern burnout. We frequently assume we are exhausted simply because we're doing too much volume, right? Like we're just too busy.
Yeah, but often the deep soul-level exhaustion comes because we are doing the wrong thing.
Exactly. We're taking tasks not our own. We pursue a specific career path because society deems it prestigious, or because our parents demanded it, or because it pays well, even though it fundamentally clashes with our own intrinsic nature and aptitudes.
And Krishna is arguing that it is better to struggle and even fail at the life that is authentically yours than to succeed brilliantly at a life that belongs to someone else. When you seek other roads, you wander. You become disconnected from your own core.
So we have established an incredibly robust philosophical framework here. We know the physical world is fleeting, and our essence is indestructible.
Right.
We know we must participate in the world through action.
Yes.
We know we must detach from the fruits of those actions. And we know we must focus entirely on our own authentic duty. This is a flawless logical system.
It is. But the human experience is rarely logical. And Arjuna gives voice to the final, most desperate question we all face.
$1 million question.
Yeah. So what does this all mean? He basically says, okay, I understand the theory, but if we know all this, why is it so incredibly hard to actually execute? What pushes us off the path? He asks Krishna, yet tell me, teacher, by what force doth man go to his ill unwilling, as if one pushed him that evil path?
It is the universal experience of self-sabotage, isn't it? We know we shouldn't act out of anger. We know we shouldn't eat the junk food. We know we shouldn't doom scroll for 3 hours. Yet we do it anyway, feeling almost as if an external force is overriding our willpower.
Right. Arjuna wants to know the name of this hijacker.
And Krishna identifies the culprit instantly. He says, Kama it is, passion it is. He calls it the unresting foe of wisdom, born of the darknesses, mighty of appetite, sinful and strong.
And the mechanics of how this passion operates are detailed through 3 brilliant evocative metaphors. Krishna says that passion obscures the truth, as smoke blots the white fire, as clinging rust mars the bright mirror, as the womb surrounds the babe unborn, so is the world of things, foiled, soiled, enclosed in this desire of flesh.
Let's break down the mechanics of those metaphors because they are so specific. Smoke does not destroy the fire. It merely obscures its light, making it impossible to see clearly.
Right.
Rust does not shatter the mirror. It corrupts the surface so it can no longer reflect the truth.
Wow, yeah.
And the womb completely encloses the unborn babe, restricting its movement and vision entirely. Kama, this endless craving for sensory gratification and worldly attachment, acts exactly like this. It doesn't destroy your inner wisdom, but it obscures it, corrupts your perception, and traps your consciousness.
And how does Kama launch its attack? What are its weapons? Krishna warns that sense, mind, and reason are its booty. Passion doesn't attack you from the outside. It uses your own senses as a Trojan horse to enter your mind. And once inside, it hijacks your reason to justify its cravings. It maddens and beguiles the soul.
If the senses are the literal gateway through which passion enters and dismantles our reason, we need a defensive strategy.
Really do.
And this takes us back to a striking image Krishna used in Chapter 2 to describe the Muni, the true sage. It is the strategy of the tortoise.
The tortoise. Krishna says the wise person is one who shall draw. As the wise tortoise draws its 4 feet safe, under its shield, his 5 frail senses back, under the spirit's buckler from the world, which else assails them?
Notice the mechanics of the tortoise. The tortoise does not cease to exist when it pulls its limbs into its shell.
No, it's still there.
It doesn't magically teleport away from the dangerous environment. It simply retracts its vulnerable points, bringing them under the protection of its core structure until the immediate threat passes.
And in our modern environment, our senses are under relentless algorithmic assault. We are navigating what the text calls sense storms.
Sense storms, that's exactly what they are.
Your phone buzzes with notifications engineered to trigger dopamine. The news cycle is meticulously crafted to induce outrage, fear, and anxiety. Advertisements scream at your insecurities, demanding you buy a product to feel whole. Your senses are being violently pulled in 1,000 directions every hour.
And Krishna describes the psychological wreck that follows if you surrender to those pulls. He warns, the mind that gives itself to follow shows a sense, seeth its helm of wisdom rent away, and like a ship in waves of whirlwind, drives to wreck and death.
A ship in a whirlwind with its helm torn away. That is the most accurate description of a 3-hour social media doom scroll I have ever heard.
It really is.
Your strong self-control is wrested by the roots. So deploying the tortoise strategy doesn't mean becoming a hermit and hiding from life. It means developing the deliberate mental muscle to retract your attention at will.
You have to practice it.
Right. It is the power to recognize, hey, the sense storm is blowing at hurricane force right now, and I am choosing to pull my focus back under the spirit's buckler. You find your center before the storm wrecks you.
It is about establishing mastery over your senses rather than living as their servant. Krishna promises that if one deals with objects of the sense, not loving and not hating, making them serve his free soul, which rests serenely low, such a man comes to tranquility.
Not loving and not hating.
Exactly. You still interact with the objects of the world, but you invert the power dynamic.
Right. It is the difference between using your smartphone as a deliberate tool to navigate a city or learn a language versus allowing that same smartphone to dictate your emotional state for the entire day based on an angry email or a lack of likes. You are making the objects serve the free soul.
And when you achieve that mastery, when you break the karma bond and tame the senses, Krishna offers one final breathtaking image to describe the state of the governed soul. He contrasts the panic-wrecked ship in the whirlwind with something infinitely more vast and stable. The ocean. He says the perfected soul is like the ocean. Day by day, the ocean receives floods and rivers pouring in from all lands. But the ocean never overflows. It doesn't leap its boundary line. It takes the tribute of the rivers, but it remains the sea.
It's such a powerful visual. To his soul's ocean, the world of sense pours streams of witchery. They leave him as they find, without commotion, taking their tribute, but remaining sea.
We spend an agonizing amount of our lives desperately trying to control the rivers. We try to control the economy, the opinions of the people around us, the outcomes of our projects, and the chaotic events of the world.
It's exhausting.
It is. We are constantly building frantic little dams, trying to stop the stress, the noise, and the unpredictability from flowing into our lives. But you can never stop all the rivers. The world will always pour streams of witchery into your life.
The profound concluding thought here is a shift in strategy. What if the true goal of your life isn't to dam the rivers? What if the goal is to deepen your own capacity? What if you strive to become so deep and so vast like the ocean that whatever chaos, whatever joy, whatever sorrow flows into your life leaves you utterly undisturbed? You receive the world, you take its tribute, but you remain yourself. You remain the sea.
That is the state of unshakable tranquility Krishna is pointing Arjuna toward, offering a path to internal peace even as they stand on the literal brink of the most devastating war of their lives.
That's the heart of this section. This is wisdom for the present, where understanding leads to clarity, and clarity shapes how we see and live. We'll see you in the next episode.